Welcome to another episode of the podcast Profits Unleashed podcast, the show where we're aiming to empower other coaches, consultants to use podcasting as a way to grow their business, right? And so today I have Joel Friedland with me, and this episode is called Learning from Mistakes, the power of risk-averse, debt-free real estate investing. So if that's something that you've looked at but you wouldn't know where to start, maybe this is the episode that you need to listen to. Look, I'm really excited to share this. We're going to be talking about syndicating industrial real estate without using debt. This is going to be quite an interesting conversation. So welcome to the show, Joel.
Thanks, Karen. It is great to see you.
So for the listeners, would you like to share, first of all, a little bit about your backstory and what inspired you to help people invest, especially without debt? Because that's something that most people probably don't think is possible.
Yeah, I'll tell you what I did that made me a changed person. In 1981, I'm 66 years old. I've been in the real estate business since I was 22, and I graduated from college and I went to work for a family business that was not my family, but they were in industrial real estate. What happens is people find themselves in a job or in a place that they got to maybe quite accidentally.
Mm-hmm.
And I had no idea what industrial real estate was when I went to work for this family. And they taught me the business. They mentored me for 10 years. It was a father, two sons, and a daughter. And they were Chicago-based real estate investors. They had about 100 investors who were syndicated participants with them. They owned 84 industrial buildings in 1981. And in 1981, interest rates were 17%, which is outrageous. I didn't know any better. When I started, that's what interest rates were. I didn't know that maybe they should be 4%. I had no idea. So they taught me the business in terms of leasing and finding buildings to buy and finding buildings for clients. I was a broker, an industrial real estate broker, and I helped landlords find tenants. I helped tenants find buildings. And so I was essentially a consultant, because when you're a broker, if you do a good job, you're consulting with clients. And then the business got really big and was making millions and millions of dollars a year in revenue. And the kids had kids, and now the grandkids came into the business, and maybe there could be 15 family members in a company. And my job was to figure out which one of the 15 was the most in charge. Because if you go to the wrong one, you're at a loss. So I had to figure out, for all these families that I was working with, who's the person, or who are the two family members that are the ones that are making decisions about how to grow their business and how to figure out whether to buy a building or lease a building and whether they were growing out of the building they were in. My job was to sit down with them and listen. Big mistake. I did a little more talking than listening at that age. I was more into selling than I was into consulting, which I learned over the years was one of the biggest mistakes that I made. Because if you listen and you're curious, you can help people. If you're trying to sell them something without understanding their needs, it is a major problem.
Absolutely. And that covers everything, actually. That's the real difference, isn't it? With any kind of sales, that people don't listen enough. And like you just said, they're asking curious questions so that they can serve, as opposed to just trying to push what they want. It's very short-sighted, isn't it?
When I was about 30 years old, I'd been in the business for about 8 years. I was asked by a family friend who was the lawyer for one of these kind of companies that had a manufacturing business to come in and meet with them and to tell them about the different buildings they could move to and to tell them about pricing and what their rent would be per year. You're talking about a very significant amount of money because a 50,000 square foot industrial building for a manufacturer, the rent would be something, including taxes and insurance, something in the neighborhood of $400,000 or $500,000 a year. People don't take decisions like that lightly. That's a big deal, especially for a 10-year lease. You're committing to a $5 million outlay over a period of time. My first time turning it around and going to a meeting and being in a consultative role rather than a sales role made me really uncomfortable, because up to that time, you'd go into a client and you would make a pitch. And the pitch would be a rehearsed series of sales statements, giving them the features and benefits of something.
Yeah.
And I went to this meeting with this company. This was the turnaround meeting. And I said, can we cut through all the sales bullshit, please? And can I just ask you questions and figure out where you guys are now, where your problems are, where your pain is, what your objectives are, and figure out what it is that you need, as opposed to me telling you what you should do. That was a first. And it felt really good, because what happened in this meeting with these family members, they were in the glove business. They were a gigantic manufacturer and distributor of work gloves, one of the biggest companies in the Chicago area. And the family must have had 15 members. And I was at this giant table for their lunch meeting, which they had every Thursday, where they would bring people in to meet. And I said, one of the cousins, his name was Harvey. And I said, Harvey, what would you say is the most important thing to you in growing your business and making the best decisions? And let's relate it to real estate. The building you're in right now, is it working for you? But more importantly, what about the building isn't working for you? Which is completely different than walking in and saying, I have a building down the street. It's 60,000 square feet. It's got a high ceiling. It's got good loading docks. All the things that are important to you, they're there. I'd be missing understanding and knowing what it was that they were trying to accomplish as a family. It's possible that they didn't even know what they were trying to accomplish as a family. They may never have had the conversation with each other that I could conduct and lead, which is what I did. And by the time we were done with about an hour's worth of talking, they were shaking their heads to everything I asked and everything I said. And I could tell that I'd won them over, and that I was going to be their consultant and broker for a long time.
That's a massive thing, because what I've taken from that story is, I think every human being at the end of the day wants to feel heard. So if they've got somebody coming in to just sell them something, they're instantly going to be a little bit anxious, maybe. They don't want to be sold to. Their guard is going to be up. Whereas your approach has flipped it on its head, then they're going to appreciate that. Because I think and this is what I think people miss, is when they're doing selling, whether it's real estate, industrial real estate, whether it's residential, whether it's sales in any shape or form, is that, like you say, so many people are straight into the pitch, imaginary line from fear to confident that you've got the right fit for them, right? But they try and push them, or it's me, this is so amazing, rather than what you've just shared there. I think is amazing tips for anybody listening, doesn't matter what industry they're in. The fact that you gave them space.
And then you want to hear the second thing that's working for me really well now, which is 44 years later than when I started working for this family. Now I have a business where I bring investors into syndications for industrial buildings. We've bought about 100 buildings. And in each case, we've brought in 20, 40, 60, 100 investors, and everybody writes a check. And now they wire the money. and they invest in a deal. Let me give you an example. We bought a complex of buildings on the Chicago River that are occupied, 3 buildings occupied by a company called Tampico, and they make fruit juice concentrate, and they have bottlers all over the world, and they bottle fruit juice. They're huge. They're in many stores in South America, Central America, and Mexico. They're very large in the Hispanic neighborhoods in the United States. If you went to a regular suburban Kroger's, they may not be in that store, but if you went to an ethnic neighborhood, they have the bottles of Tampico. That deal was $13 million. I found a group of investors. I brought in 80 investors. The average investor put in about $120,000. And so I was literally selling 80 something people the idea that this is a good investment. And I had the features. You're making a 7% annual cash flow yield. So every year, if you put 100,000 in, you get 7,000. And each year the rent would go up. And we had a 7-year lease with Tampico. And the future of this 5-acre site on the river is probably tear it down and make it into condos and maybe double or triple the money that we put in. So it was 13 million, and theoretically we could sell it for 26 million or 35 or 40 million dollars one day, because it's riverfront property where if it had a 5-story condo building with balconies, the residents would overlook the Chicago River. There are not many sites with that much frontage. So what I would do is, in the olden days, I would start selling the features of that property. I did something different. Brene Brown, she talks about vulnerability. And so I changed my way of talking to new investors from, I've got this great deal and it's got all these great features, to, in 2008, I went through a disastrous period in my business life when the economy crashed, where literally I was losing money on 10 of my 50 deals, to the point where it was so bad I thought I might have to go bankrupt. And I went into a deep clinical depression because I was so devastated. And I learned from that experience that's a terrible way to feel. And from then on, after getting out of my depression and persevering through the difficult times, I learned that the safest way to invest is with no bank. Because all the trouble that I got into was related to owing money and having personal guarantees at bank. So now I'm starting with this vulnerability. Nobody opens with, I was in a depression because I had made this mistake or something went against me terribly. And all of a sudden, what happens is, I think people's antenna, they change from, wow, this is somebody who's being honest with me and opening up about real things and real feelings and real problems and what he learned from them before he even starts telling me anything about the property. That is really different.
Powerful.
Yeah. So then I open the second part of the conversation with, so what are you looking to accomplish? What are you looking for? You're in touch with me here. We've got a bunch of different real estate properties. We consider them super safe relative to other people's deals because of the terrible experience that I had and what I learned. What are you looking to do? And then again, listening, like with the glove company, asking questions and listening. And it's just such a different way.
It's all going back to, if people are expecting to be sold to, they are going to come in defense. They're ready to defend themselves. So all of a sudden, what you've done is you've lowered the barriers. And so then it's a more natural, like you said, it's authentic, it's more authentic. They're going to trust, you're building on that trust factor because you're just having a conversation really and sharing a story. You know, this works, right?
Now I'm going to do it to you. All right. I have listened to and watched a number of your podcasts. You do a lot of podcasting, and you have a lot of very interesting, diverse guests.
Thank you.
My question for you is this. What do you get from doing these podcasts? What does it make? What's the good feeling that you get from doing these podcasts?
Is to, I believe everybody has a story. Every story is valid. And somebody's message, there's somebody out there that needs to hear it. Whether it's somebody that's going to be inspired to make a change in their life, or because I have such a range of different coaches and consultants on here, if we can make one difference to somebody, then it's job well done. Because I feel from my point of view, this is one of the reasons why podcasting is on the increase, is because you are just showing up. Like you just said earlier, most people go into a sales pitch, a pre-rehearsed sales spiel, whereas the difference with us two here, we're just having a conversation. It's authentic. And I really feel that people don't want to hear from the celebrities as much anymore. They want to hear the stories of where this person started at. Because if somebody's over here and they're hugely successful, they can't relate. Whereas when you start your story, as you just did, right, talking about what went wrong when it was going wrong, and you were actually in that depression, somebody who's there right now may think to themselves, he turned his life around, maybe I can too. It makes you relatable. And if people, and I feel that this is the whole point of podcasting, is the idea to shift the belief in the listener to come to the conclusion that, okay, I resonate with this guy, Joel, talking about investing in commercial real estate. I want to know more. And I think that goes, so, because let's face it, what do most people's maybe perception on in commercial real estate? Oh, that's not for me. Oh, I can't get involved in that. Maybe I don't have enough money to invest, or they don't know enough about it. And by bringing you on and you sharing how it actually works, then you're changing the belief in the listener for them to think, oh, maybe it is possible for me. And hopefully they will reach out to you.
So that's why you like being a podcast host.
I love being a podcast host because I get to meet people that I never would have come in contact with.
Yes.
It opens up doorways, the opportunities that have come purely because you're connecting human to human.
Got it. If I was in a meeting, after listening to what you just said, I would now ask another question. When you're taking a walk and you're thinking about your podcasting career and you're thinking about your strategy and what you're doing, how many self-doubts do you have during that walk about whether you're doing it right or whether you could do it better and differently? How many times does that creep into your head?
Not so much now, but I've been doing this 5 years, right? Like you said, this is going to be episode 267, but I've also...
Congratulations on that, by the way.
Thank you. I've done that. So I've been doing it a long time, but absolutely, in the beginning, I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea why I was doing it, right? It came out of COVID. I interviewed a load of coaches. I was offered a radio show off the back of it. And then I started a podcast. I didn't have a strategy, Joel. And then I realized throughout it that this is a great way for people to grow their business. So this is what we do. We help people launch a podcast so that they can grow their business. Who is going to listen to me? Because I wasn't the expert. I was learning myself. Always doubts creep in the beginning. 100%.
So your main business is helping people to launch their own podcast, and then do the production as well?
Yes, we do the production, we do the strategy, coach them through it. because I love what I do.
I'm giving you a chance to do a commercial now. So I'm going to ask you, and don't be offended.
You can't offend me. Don't worry,
Well,
John.
I might be able to. You'd be surprised. All right. So the question is, if I were to sign up with you and say, gee, I think I should do my own podcast, how many would I do initially under your tutelage, under your mentorship? And roughly, ballpark, what would it cost me to do that?
Oh, you want to the whole spiel.
Nope, I don't. I want one simple answer.
Oh,
You'll do 15 podcasts for $7,500 and do all of the everything and teach me how to do it. How far off am I?
not far off, 12. So I get a year. Sorry, what am I talking about? 52, a weekly podcast. So that's
Okay.
52 episodes.
Yes.
And the launch and the setup and everything.
Yeah.
Yes, for
Yeah.
7,500. That's right.
That's a great deal. And I'll tell you why I know that, because I've been on 109 podcasts and I've run into 2 or 3 other people who do what you do, help people make podcasts. I have been resisting it. And one of the reasons is it's a lot of work. What I do for a living is I buy buildings, I syndicate them, and I have 250 investors. And so for me, I've thought about it a few times, doing podcast and being a host. I've thought about it. There are people in my industry who do it, who are really top notch, very successful. They have much larger portfolios of buildings than I do. I've got 23 buildings. There's a guy in Texas who's got 160 buildings, and he does a podcast and he gets great guests, amazing guests. He reaches out to them and they go on his, he goes on theirs. Sometimes they're just well-known people who don't have one. So I guess the question is, for anyone else listening to this, when does it make sense to become a podcast host in your career path?
Yeah, it's not for a newbie, because you're right. There's a lot of moving parts that people think it's just so easy. If only it were that easy, right? So people who have something established that is currently working and you're looking to then scale it, it is a great way, because it opens up doors, as I said, and it's not just about the listener, it's about the guests. So the way I look at it is, so for you, who would you love the opportunity to have a conversation with that could help grow your business, maybe refer investors to you, right? Because at the end of the day, you're not just doing it for fun. I will say I do this because I do genuinely love doing it. But at the end of the day, if it wasn't bringing me any money, then I could no longer do it, right? So the way I see it, and again, there are other opinions out there, Joel, and each to their own, but the way I see it is, it's not just about the listener. You're showing up to serve the listener and giving them tips. And we're going to go through this about commercial real estate, but also it's in when you're intentional behind who you invite on and who could maybe refer people. It could be a potential collaborator. It's all about collaboration. It's about the building the relationships. You could have somebody that's about to do a massive project somewhere outside of Chicago that you're going to be involved with. You just don't know until you start to have these conversations with people. You don't know how you could maybe help each other. And that's what it's about.
I'm not over the hump yet of whether I would want to do a podcast. I have not ruled it out, but I have not ruled it in.
Oh, we'll have to have another conversation then, Joel. But for the listeners here, this is to learn about investing debt-free. And that was the key. That was what sort of made my ears open up.
So that's what I do for a living, is I buy buildings and I bring in a bunch of investors and we collect rent and we do the property management. But what I really like to do is I like to learn things and be curious about how people do things and what works and what doesn't work, which is why this is such an interesting conversation for me. What I want to do, I have trouble getting enough investors in each deal. Why? Because when a deal comes along and I find a building, I make an offer to buy it. Let's say it's a $3 million building. And then I have 30 days after I make my contract to investigate the roof condition, the HVAC, understand the financial statement of the tenant who's paying the rent, make sure they're solid enough that they'll stay in business for the term of the lease. So I do all of these things in 30 days. Then, after I determine that the building is perfect for us or imperfect but good enough, then I have 15 days to close. So I have to come up with $3 million because we don't do debt on most deals. I have to come up with the whole $3 million in 45 days. But I'm not even sure if I'm going to buy it until after the first 30 days of due diligence. So now, really, I have to be ready to raise $3 million. And usually, it's an average of $50,000 per person, which means I need 60 investors in 15 days. That is impossible. Can you imagine if I told you I need you to get 60 people to put $50,000 into something in 15 days?
That's quite stressful. For me, that would be incredibly stressful. So you must have some kind of process. How do you get this done?
That's a great question. What we do is we have a fund, and the fund buys the building with its money, and then I put the opportunity out there for investors, and I now can raise the 3 million over a period of months as opposed to over a period of days. And what we do is it's called backfilling. We backfill the 3 million that we put our original money into until we've got the 3 million from a group of investors. And then we get all that money back from the backfill, and we use that money to go buy the next building that we don't have to buy with a bunch of investors who aren't ready yet. So we keep recycling that money, and it's called sponsorship money. And that's how we do it. It's almost like a magic trick. How do you raise $3 million from 60 people in 15 days? The answer is you don't. You can't be done.
Yeah, wondering. I thought, how on earth are you going to do that? So that sounds, because what do you think is one of the reasons when everyone wants to obviously make more money, right? So they might be looking at ways to invest, and maybe people have heard of invest in real estate. So what do you think is stopping people from even looking at the idea of investing in commercial real estate? I only know from being the host of Icons of Real Estate and speaking to so many realtors, whether it's residential or commercial, but commercial has got to be where
they're big. It's bigger deals.
Yes, bigger deals. Would you say there's more guarantee?
No, there's no guarantee. It's always risky. And a lot of people these days invest in what's called multifamily, which is complexes of apartments. And they're all over the world. There's a whole underworld of syndicators that buy and sell and syndicate multifamily complexes. Industrial is different. It's very unusual. There's only about 5 of us in the whole United States who are syndicators at our level of industrial. A lot of institutions, which means insurance companies and pension funds, own industrial, but not a whole lot of groups of individual people. So I had to come up with a way to do it where it wouldn't cause me to have an anxiety attack, where I have to raise money from 60 people in 15 days. But my vulnerability is this. I'm never sure that the deal's going to work. I'm never sure that we're going to make money on it. I'm always hopeful, and I bought 100-something buildings, so I'm pretty good at it, but no one has a perfect batting average. So I have to also tell people what the risks are in each deal. And again, being vulnerable, I tell them the risks first. If you hear the risks first, it disarms the skeptical thought process in the person's mind. Because if I talk about what could go wrong, they're not thinking, wow, this guy's trying to sell me into something. He's trying to fill me in on something that I don't know anything about by jamming it down my throat in 10 minutes. I would rather say, in fact, we have an article that we send people, which is why you should not invest with us. And it has every reason why they shouldn't. And there's 10 reasons why they shouldn't. I don't want to get into it, but it's the whole different twist approach. So my question to you for after the podcast, although I need to run because I have to be at a building in about 10 minutes, is really the whole question that I need to understand with you is, will it make it easier for me to get those 60 people to invest if I have a podcast and I circulate it to those people and they get to see guests talking about it and me asking questions that show that I know what I'm talking about?
Well, you've just said it there. I think that is it. And for one, it humanizes you. It also, because you are just showing up as you, people will feel like they know you because they're hearing you all the time and they're more likely to trust you. You've got a great track record, right? You've got a fantastic track record. You're doing it all the time. So you're saying that the minimal investment could be what, 50 grand?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying? A lot of people probably thought, oh, I would have to invest millions if I was going to go into that. You know, that by voicing that in conversation, it changes people's perception of what is possible and whether they can do it. The more people understand it, the more they'd be like, okay, I've got this option and this option. If I want to invest in something, yes, everything has a risk. But if you're sharing the risks through your podcast, people know the risk. So when they are ready, it isn't about selling anything on your podcast, right? You're not doing the podcast really you're selling without selling. It's more subtle.
It's selling credibility.
You're selling credibility. Yeah. And when it's the right moment for the listener to come in and find more, they're going to get in touch with you. So if you have that, you just said you had this report, or not report, but this thing of 10 reasons why not to. That would be a great thing for people to get. So you get their email and you send that out. All of a sudden, you're building your own personal list. They might not be ready right now to invest with you, but they might do it at a later stage. Then you can email them the next project, project.
So
it's the right time for them.
All right. So let's you and I get in touch after this conversation. This is great.
Absolutely. Love it. But for the listeners out there who are thinking, okay, this sounds quite interesting. Joel's been very honest and vulnerable, sharing his story. I might like to know more. What should the listeners do next? How do they get in touch with you?
I'm bad on social media. So the only way to really get to me is through my website, which is BRIT properties.com. And there's a way to contact us somehow through the website. I have nothing to do with that. I buy the buildings and I have the relationships with the investors. There are people behind the scenes who do all that. But BritProperties.com.
Fantastic. Look, Joel, thank you so much for the time today. It's been fascinating speaking with you. Great conversation. And to the listeners, I'll be back next time with the podcast Profits Unleashed podcast. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to today's episode on the Podcast Profits Unleashed podcast. If you're